You're sitting in the realtor's office and she slides the listing across the table with that practiced smile. It's perfect for a starter home, she says. The house is 1,200 square feet, needs new appliances, and the kitchen was last updated when people still used AOL. The price? $425,000. You try to keep your face neutral, but your brain is screaming. If this is the starter, what does the actual house cost? Sound familiar? Here's what they're not telling you. That word starter is doing a lot of psychological heavy lifting. It makes you think temporary. It makes you think stepping stone. It makes you think, sure, it's expensive, but we'll only be here 5 years max before we upgrade. But the math tells a completely different story, one that your realtor has zero incentive to share with you. We're going to calculate exactly what happens when you buy that $425,000 starter home. Not the fantasy timeline in your head, but what actually happens mathematically. The real timeline. The real equity buildup. The real cost of upgrading. And by the end, you'll understand why starter homes aren't starter anything. They're just expensive houses rebranded to make the trap feel intentional. So let's talk about what $425,000 actually buys you. Your realtor showed you the listing price. She walked you through the mortgage calculator showing principal and interest. She probably mentioned property taxes in passing. But here's what that monthly payment actually looks like when you account for everything. Your mortgage payment at 7% interest comes to about $2,830 per month. That's just principal and interest, nothing else. Now add property taxes. Depending on your state, you're looking at $400 to $600 per month. Let's call it $500. Add homeowners insurance, another $150 to $250 per month. We'll say $200. Then there's the maintenance reserve. The rule is 1% of home value annually, which breaks down to about $350 per month. You need to set this aside because things break. Roofs fail, HVAC systems die, water heaters flood your basement at 2 in the morning. Add another $100 per month for the utility increase versus renting. Bigger space, higher bills. Let's add it up. $2,830 plus $500 plus $200 plus $350 plus $100. That's $3,980 per month. And we haven't even talked about HOA fees yet. If your starter home has those, add another $100 to $300 per month. You're looking at a total monthly cost of $4,000 to $4,200 depending on your location and whether there's an HOA. Here's what that means for your income. Lenders use a debt-to-income ratio of 33% as their guideline. To afford $4,000 per month in housing costs, you need a household income of about $145,000. That's top 20% of American households for a starter home. Let that sink in. The entry point to homeownership now requires an income that 90% of American families don't have. But here's where it gets insane. Let's say you have that income. You buy the house. You move in. You're building equity, right? That's what everyone says. You're not throwing money away on rent anymore. You're investing in your future. So let's calculate exactly how much equity you'll have after 5 years. Because 5 years is what everyone imagines. 5 years, maybe 7 max, then we'll upgrade to the real house. The house with the extra bedroom and the updated kitchen and the yard that doesn't look like a dirt patch. Here's what actually happens. After 5 years, after 60 months of payments, you will have paid a total of $238,800. Let me say that again. $238,800. That's 4,000 times 60. Now, how much of that actually went toward paying down your loan? About $55,000. The rest? Interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance? Gone. Your remaining loan balance is $370,000. But wait, your house appreciated, right? Let's be generous and say it appreciated 3% annually. That's pretty standard. Your house is now worth about $493,000. So your gross equity, the difference between what it's worth and what you owe, is $123,000. Sounds pretty good, right? Wrong, because you can't access that equity without selling, and selling costs money. Realtor commissions, closing costs, repairs to get it market ready. You're looking at 8 to 10% of the sale price. Let's call it 9%. That's $44,000 in selling costs. So your net equity, what you actually walk away with, is $79,000. You paid $238,800. You netted $79,000. That's a 67% loss rate. 67% of your housing payments vanished into interest, taxes, and transaction costs. Here's the quotable line. You didn't buy a stepping stone. You bought a $250,000 rental agreement with the bank. But let's make this even more real. Let me introduce you to the Johnsons. They're 34 and 36. Two kids, ages 3 and 5. Combined household income of $145,000. He works in tech sales. She's a senior accountant. They're doing well, right? Top 20% of households. They bought their starter home 3 years ago in a suburb outside Denver. The house cost $415,000 back then. They qualified. The lender said they could afford it. The realtor said it was perfect for a young family. So let's look at their actual monthly budget. After taxes and 401k contributions, their take-home pay is about $8,600 per month. Housing costs, including mortgage, property tax, insurance, and maintenance reserve, run them $4,100. Childcare for 2 kids under 5 costs $1,800 per month. Car payments for 2 vehicles, because you need 2 cars in the suburbs, that's $850. Car insurance is $220. Gas is $280. Groceries for a family of 4 run about $800 per month, and they're not buying organic. Health insurance, the portion they pay plus out-of-pocket costs, is $400. Student loans are $430. Utilities, that's electric, gas, water, and internet, come to $320. Cell phones are $120 for both of them. Let's add that up. $4,100 plus $1,800 plus $850 plus $220 plus $280 plus $800 plus $400 plus $430 plus $320 plus $120. That leaves them with $280 per month. $280. They make $145,000 per year and have $280 left over after basic expenses. No savings for college. No retirement beyond the bare minimum 401k. No emergency fund. No vacation budget. Nothing. Here's what that actually feels like day to day. It feels like driving past the trampoline park because $45 for 2 hours is irresponsible. It feels like date night being Chipotle twice a month where you split a large guac. It feels like your 3-year-old wearing hand-me-downs from a cousin, even though you have a 6-figure income. It feels like every unexpected expense, every vet bill, every car repair, every dental work that insurance doesn't cover, going on a credit card that takes months to pay off. It feels like saying we can't afford that to your kids. Constantly. Small things. A new bike. The field trip to the science museum. The birthday party at the arcade. It feels like making $145,000 and feeling broke every single day. They haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. Not because they don't want to, because there's literally nothing to save. Every month is a zero-sum game. Every unexpected expense triggers an anxiety spiral about which credit card still has room. And here's the psychological trap they're caught in. They keep thinking, we just need to make it 5 more years. Then we'll upgrade to a bigger house with more space. Then life will feel less tight. But the math says they're stuck for 15 years minimum. Because that equity calculation I showed you, that's their reality too. So why does your realtor keep calling it a starter home when the math shows you'll be stuck there for 15 years? Let's talk about why your realtor lies. It's not personal, it's structural. It's the way the entire system is designed. Your realtor makes a commission on your purchase. Typically, 3% of the sale price goes to the buyer's agent. On a $425,000 house, that's $12,750. Not bad for a few weeks of work. But here's where it gets interesting. If you buy that starter home now and then upgrade to a $650,000 house in 5 years, your realtor or her colleagues make another commission. 3% of $650,000 is $19,500. So the starter home narrative generates 2 transactions. 2 commissions, total of $32,250 from you over 5 years. But what if your realtor told you the truth? What if she said, look, you should really wait and save for the house you actually need? Skip the starter. In 3 years, buy the $650,000 house directly. One transaction, one commission, $19,500. The starter home narrative generates 64% more revenue for the real estate industry. 64%. That's not a small difference. That's the business model they need you to buy twice. The entire industry depends on it. And it's not just your realtor. It's the manufactured urgency they create. Prices only go up, they say, ignoring 2008. Ignoring the correction that happened in 2022 and 2023. You're throwing money away on rent, they say. Ignoring opportunity cost. Ignoring the fact that renting while investing the difference often produces better returns. Build equity now, they say. Ignoring that front-loaded interest means you build almost nothing in the early years. You can always refinance, they say. Ignoring closing costs and the fact that you might not qualify if rates are higher or your income hasn't increased. Lock in now before rates go higher, they tell you. Rates went from 3% to 7% to 6.5%. That advice trapped people at the peak. Then there's the lender relationship. Realtors work with preferred lenders. These lenders pre-approve you for the maximum you qualify for, not what you can comfortably afford. If you can technically qualify for a $480,000 loan, that's what your pre-approval letter says. And that pre-approval feels like permission. It feels like someone with financial expertise looked at your situation and said, yes, you can handle this. But here's the truth. That pre-approval is based on debt-to-income ratios designed to maximize loan volume, not your quality of life. No one in this chain benefits from you buying less house. Everyone profits from you maxing out. The realtor gets a bigger commission. The lender gets a bigger loan with more interest. The insurance company gets a bigger policy. Nobody makes money when you say no thanks. And underneath all of this is the cultural enabler, the American dream mythology. We've successfully convinced middle-class households that they're failing if they're not building equity, that renting is throwing money away, that home ownership is the only path to financial security. This psychological pressure is worth billions to the real estate industry. They've reframed deliberately choosing to rent to preserve financial flexibility as giving up on success. But here's the truth. Renting while investing the difference in index funds often produces better returns with zero maintenance headaches, no property tax increases, and complete geographic flexibility. The shame of renting is a sales tactic, nothing more. So let's talk about the actual timeline. How long are you really stuck in that starter home? We already did the 5-year calculation, $79,000 in net equity after selling costs. But to upgrade from a $425,000 house to a $650,000 house, you need a 20% down payment. That's a $130,000. You're $51,000 short, so you can't upgrade at year 5. You're stuck. Let's keep going. Year 10. You've now paid $477,600 in total housing costs. Your principal is down to about $295,000. Your house, appreciating at 3% annually, is now worth about $570,000. Gross equity of $275,000, minus selling costs of about $51,000. Net equity of $224,000. Finally, you have enough for that down payment on the $650,000 house. But here's the catch. Your new mortgage is $480,000 at whatever interest rates are 10 years from now. Let's say rates are still around 7%. Your new payment is $3,800 per month. Just principal and interest. Add property tax, insurance, and maintenance, and you're looking at $4,800 to $5,000 per month. To qualify for that, you need a household income of about $175,000. Hope you got those raises. Hope your career trajectory went exactly as planned. Hope no layoffs, no industry downturns, no pivots to lower paying but more sustainable work. And here's the brutal timeline reality. You bought that starter home when your kids were 3 and 5. Year 10, when you finally have enough equity to upgrade, your kids are 13 and 15. They're in high school. They have established friend groups. They don't want to move. The house you needed, the one with the extra bedrooms and the playroom and the yard big enough for a swing set, you needed that when they were 3 and 5. You needed it during the years when space actually mattered, when they had friends over constantly, when they needed room to play. The starter home consumed those years, and now that you can finally upgrade, you're upgrading into empty nest territory. There's no such thing as a starter home at $425,000. There's just an expensive house you'll be stuck in through the years you actually needed more space. So let's talk about who this system actually serves, because it does work for some people. It works for dual-income professional households earning $250,000 or more. Usually no kids yet, or they can afford a full-time nanny, so childcare isn't crushing them. Working in industries with reliable 10 to 15% annual raises. Tech, finance, medicine. These households can actually save $3,000 to $5,000 per month on top of the mortgage. They view the starter home as temporary because they have the financial bandwidth for it to be temporary. For them, the strategy works exactly as advertised. Buy the starter, build some equity, upgrade in 5 years, repeat. But here's who gets trapped. Everyone earning $120,000 to $180,000. The doing well but not rich bracket. Families with young kids and childcare costs eating 20 to 30% of take-home. Single-income households or anyone with gig economy. Income instability. Anyone with student loan debt reducing their saving capacity. Any household that needs to spend 35% or more of gross income on housing. That's who gets trapped. And here's the brutal truth. The real estate industry markets starter homes to people earning $140,000, while the strategy only works for people earning $250,000. It's a luxury financial strategy rebranded as universal advice. When you earn $140,000 and feel poor despite doing everything right, this is why. You're executing a wealth-building strategy designed for people who make twice what you make. Let me give you permission to do something radical. You're allowed to opt out. You're allowed to look at a $425,000 starter home and say, no. Here's the threshold. If your household income is under $180,000 and you're looking at houses over $400,000, you need to hear this. You're not buying freedom. You're buying financial constraint. The math doesn't care about how badly you want a yard. It doesn't care about how tired you are of landlords. It doesn't care that your parents bought their first house at 28. The math is what it is. And if the math says trap, you're allowed to walk away. Here are your alternatives. Rent and invest the difference in index funds. You'll likely end up wealthier with zero maintenance headaches and complete geographic flexibility. You move to a genuinely lower cost of living area where $425,000 buys an actual house. Not a starter. A real house. 2,500 square feet, move-in ready, 4 bedrooms, updated kitchen. The whole thing. Those places exist. Wait and save aggressively for 3 to 5 more years and buy the house you actually need. Skip the starter trap entirely, or accept that homeownership might not be financially optimal in this market at this time in your city. That's a market failure, not a personal failure. Choosing not to buy a house that would make you broke is not giving up on the American dream. It's refusing to confuse debt with success. The realtor calling it a starter home doesn't make it one. The lender pre-approving you doesn't mean you can actually afford it. Your parents telling you that you're throwing money away on rent doesn't mean they understand this market. They bought their house for 3 times their annual income. You're looking at houses that cost 6 times yours. The math doesn't work. It cannot work. It will not work. Success isn't owning a house. Success is financial flexibility, low stress, and options. Sometimes renting is what gives you that. Sometimes moving to a cheaper city is what gives you that. Sometimes waiting is what gives you that. You are allowed to make the choice that preserves your sanity and your savings. You are allowed to prioritize not being broke over achieving a milestone that doesn't even make sense anymore. The system is designed to make you feel like you're failing if you're not buying. But you're not failing, you're refusing to trap yourself. Yep, that's not the same thing. The Johnsons are still in their starter home. Their kids are now 6 and 8. They've been there 5 years. They have about 85,000 in equity after selling costs. Not enough to upgrade, not enough to escape. They make $145,000 and they feel broke every day. They did everything right. They followed all the advice. They bought the starter home, and now they're stuck. Don't be the Johnsons. The math gives you permission to walk away.